Non-Kululeko, who was supposed to start first, will begin by Amazing Grace, so I can't see them either. So Furqan Rao. Dear friends, I give you Furqan Rao, Pakistan.
It's there. Hello. Yes, it's working. Yeah. I'm Dr. Furqan Rao, and my today topic is how disinformation and fake news impacting political discourse in the digital era, and how the government is taking measures to counter this misinformation, disinformation, and what are the strategies being adopted by the government of Pakistan. First of all, I will give you the brief introduction about the impact of the disinformation, fake news, misinformation on the political discourse in Pakistan. It has significantly affected the political discourse in Pakistan, contributing to the polarization, undermining the democratic process, and eroding the public trust. If we are talking about the social media impact in the digital era, we need to know about the total number of the users, social media users and the internet users in Pakistan. There are more than 116 million internet users in Pakistan, which is almost 45.7% of the total population. So if we will talk about the social media presence, there are more than 66.9 million social media users are in Pakistan, which is about 26.4% of the total population. These are the social media tools which are being used by the Pakistanis. The most popular is the YouTube, followed by the Facebook, Instagram, and the most popular for the political discourse and debates is the X. Now I will give you the brief introduction about the presence of the social media and the presence of the political leaders on the X and the Facebook. We have four mainstream political parties, which include Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, Pakistan Muslim League Noon, PPP, and the Jamiat-e-Ulama-e-Islam, which is the religious political party. But all these parties have representation in not only in the upper house, but lower house and in all provincial assemblies of the Pakistan. You can see the Imran Khan is the most popular leader on the X, and he has 21 million followers, followed by the Bilawal Bhutto Zardari. He had served as a foreign minister of the Pakistan. He has more than 5 million, and then former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, he has more than 1 million followers. Now you can see their political party's presence on X again. The party presence is 10.4 million of the PTI, followed by PMLN. It has more than 2.5 million, and then PPP, and then Jamiat-e-Ulama-e-Islam. Now I'll discuss about the Facebook presence of these parties, and then there is a second-tier leadership, third-tier leadership, but I'll talk about the mainstream political parties' presence on the social media. Again, the PTI leads, followed by the PMLN, PPP, and Jamiat-e-Ulama-e-Islam. Now you can see that we have a great presence, our parties has a great presence on social media applications, including Facebook, X, and YouTube, and other social media applications. And they are communicating on the political discourse through, by using these media applications. But there are problems that they are, sometimes they are also spreading the misinformation, disinformation, fake news, deepfake videos, especially during the election of 2018 and 24, and it posed a threat to the voter how to decide whether it's reliable information, reliable video, reliable news or not. So Increased political polarization. Fake news is often used in Pakistan to vilify political opponents and create deep divisions among supporters of the different parties. Social media platforms like Facebook, X, and YouTube amplify partisan narratives, further embedding polarization. Impact on the political discourse, we can see that the character assassination, especially during the election time, were on the peak, followed by, in different cases, even presently, the deep things are being circulated, but not only from Pakistan, but from the abroad as well, because of the overseas Pakistanis who are affiliated with the different political parties, particularly PTI and the PMLN and the PPP. They are circulating a number of different information which are not based on the facts. These information are false, and they are not being regulated by any law because they very less used to come to Pakistan rarely. So you can see that, but by circulating the misinformation, the distrust on media enhanced in Pakistan, and now people are unsure which sources are reliable. Manipulation of public opinion, voters swayed by viral disinformation during the 2018 and 24 elections. Again, I discussed about the deepfake videos and the character assassinations, the fake letters. It is still being circulated, but not only inside, but the outside of the country. I'll move on. Such kind of the fake news, disinformation, misinformation, not only create impact on the society, but also on the people, mental health, and it causes eruption of the cultural clashes, unethical practices, bad impact upon the business, and sometimes social violence. Wow. Now I will talk about the legislative measures and the policy is being adopted by our state and the government of Pakistan. To counter the disinformation, misinformation, we introduced PICA law in 2016 by the former Prime Minister Imran Khan, which is now in the jail. And he passed this law called Prevention of Electronic Crimes Act 2016. Under this act, it criminalizes online harassment, hate speech, political hate speech, either are the religious hate speech and the fake news. They will be dealt with the different, this law, and if someone found, he or she will be convicted. But now this present government, which is a coalition of the two major political parties of the PMLN and PPP, they have amended the existing law in 2025, and now this amendment applies also on the cellular users and the social media users across the board. You can say the whole population is now have to follow the rules and regulations. Otherwise, it was related to only media people. Now it is for every person. If someone will give fake news, misinformation, disinformation, and if their news is not based on the facts, he can be punished under these laws. And after this amendment, the government also introduced Social Media Protection and Regulatory Authority to regulate online content, including removal or blocking of the unlawful offensive content. Then it aims to protect citizens' digital rights and promote responsible internet usage.
Dear Furqan, we have a time limit, please.
How many minutes?
We need to finish your presentation.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, we have three mainstream authorities which are they are dealing with the fake news, misinformation, which includes PTA, National Cybercrime Investigation Agencies, and Digital Media Wing, Ministry of Information. This is the first case which is now registered under the National Investigation Cybercrime Agencies after the passage of 2025 amendment in the 2016 law. I'll just move on at the end. These are the recommendations that we need to enhance the media literacy through media literacy campaigns, educate public on verified sources and spotting the fake news. Fact-checking is very much important, which is also part of this forum, I think. Government and independent collaborators must do collaboration to counter this and establish the fact-checking sources, and stronger data protection laws protect users' privacy while fighting misinformation, and ensure protection of the free speech alongside misinformation control. Okay. I'll conclude that disinformation is a serious threat to Pakistan's political stability and democratic process. While government has made efforts to address it through legislation, regulation, and digital media engagement, the strategies often face criticism of overreach and lack of transparency. So therefore, a balanced approach is needed, balanced legislation is needed to counter the disinformation, misinformation in Pakistan. Thank you so much.
Дорогой Фуркан, спасибо большое.
Dear Furqan, thank you for your presentation. We have our friends, our guest from America, Caleb Maupin. So let's give a round of applause to our speaker.
Our speaker, thanks. Дорогие speakers.
Dear speakers, please stick within 5 minutes per presentation. So we need to give opportunity to everyone. Thank you. Right now, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Nonkuleko.
Need to press a button.
Yeah, I think I'm audible now. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I greet you all. My name is Dr. Nonkuleko Patricia Mantula from South Africa. I will do a short introduction of myself, and I will also explain why I chose the topic that I did choose this afternoon during this very important conference. I am a descendant of the Zulu Royal Nation and currently the COO of the Zulu Goodwill Zwelithini Foundation, which is upholding the human rights and the dignity and the legacy, the cultural legacy of His departed Majesty, King Goodwill Zwelithini. I'm a princess of the Royal Amahlubi Nation in South Africa, and I am a broadcaster and a journalist. I'm currently doing a broadcast here at this prestigious event for GSQ, which is a media house that I founded that got awarded last year at the BRICS Business Forum in 2024 for being one of the outstanding media, businesses that women entrepreneurs have started up. I also believe very firmly in the power of cultural diplomacy. Now, I said I would be speaking today about the impact of colonialization on media narratives. As we sit here today, we are all aware of narratives about each other's countries, about each other's politics, only because we have been given that information by media houses that are Western prone. Mama Miriam Makeba once said, "You can never expect the hunter to tell the true story about the prey." So the hunter will always exalt themselves. And that's exactly what colonization has done. Colonization has allowed a narrative about Africa, about every other country, the global South countries, to become a narrative that shows them as the victors. And we, am I not loud enough?
Пожалуйста, немножко ближе микрофон.
Okay. Is it better? Okay. So the hunter is always showing themselves as the winner, as the brave one. The hunter will never tell you the story of the prey's endeavor to fight them, or the prey's endeavor to alleviate themselves. And that's what media has done. For many years, media has been a catalyst of false information. Our current fact-checking endeavors or entities that exist have a Western media narrative. And I am so grateful that today we are here and we are saying, as the Global South, as Africa, as BRIC countries, we are going to come together to find a solution to this. Now, this solution will come from us being authentic to our own voices. I will give you an example. Since I arrived last night, I've been asking various delegates, of their perspectives of South Africa. And only because I do come from South Africa. And their perspectives have been about Nelson Mandela, about the recent trip of our current President Cyril Ramaphosa to the White House. Nothing else other than that. And that's because that's what the media, Western media specifically, has been narrating. Now, if I ask you, how much more do you know about each other? It will all be from a Western lens. I believe it is high time that we are not only speaking facts, but we are using these digital global platforms to speak the facts and truths about who we are. But regulation is needed. Regulation is definitely needed, and I know there's a session that will be encompassing legal minds, that will be speaking about how we can use the digital space, make it have dignity, and also a legal framework that will be globally encompassing. Colonization has really had a negative impact. An example just from myself, if you may allow me, Dimitri. Growing up in South Africa, being born in a year where the talks of ending apartheid had started, I was given a name. My name, Nonkululeko, means liberation, because my family believed that these children are going to be liberated. However, when I started school, I was told that my hair is not good enough. My hair is not neat. My eyes are too big. My lips are too thick. The media told me this. The school system that was colonial by nature told me this. And only up until now have I found my own voice. Therefore, I wear my hair the way I wear it. I am proud to wear my African attires. I am proud to speak my language and my culture. I'm proud to teach of it. But that only came about because digital frameworks started coming up. We started having access, but there's a disparity in the rural areas and remote areas of Africa when it comes to access to information that is digital. And that disparity is still causing African people to believe that everything Western is better than that which is African. And I believe that with us having these conversations, with us having these platforms, we will stop having a narrative that is pro-Western, because it has also crippled our economies. When agencies, rating agencies, want to get the sentiment of any country, they go to the media, because the media shares the sentiments on the ground, whether social or political or economical. And most of these rating agencies themselves by nature are very Western biased. I won't mention names, but these Western biases cause the countries like Russia, like countries in Africa, to be undermined when it comes to them getting funding. So with global fact-checking networks that will become more centric and focused on the global South, we will start seeing a change, because even houses that are supposed to be rating agencies will start opening up to getting information from us. The colonial narrative will end. We will know more about each other, and we'll start interacting for economic participation, but not only economic participation, cultural participation, political participation, and we will see a change. I know we're limited with time. Thank you very much, Dimitri.
Спасибо большое за...
Thanks a lot for this interesting contribution, Ms. Nonkululeko. Let me once again remind you that there is a radio station set up at Mantua, right where, across from the hall. It's really engaging. It immerses you into a South African experience. Next up, I'd like to give the floor to Miss Amazing Grace Ajayi of Nigeria. Please, the floor is yours. Amazing Grace?
Start, please. You need to press the button in your microphone. And check, please.
Can you hear me?
A little bit closer, closer.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. You can.
Okay.
Yep.
Good evening, everybody. And it's a delight to be here. My name is Amazing Grace Ajayi, and I'm from Nigeria, representing also a media brand called Afia TV. I'm so happy to be here. I see a lot of African faces here, and my South African sister just spoke, Dr. Nunku. She always would say Amanda, so I want to say Amanda, my sister. And of course, from the parts of Africa where I come from, there's a popular tribe there, and they would always say Ndewo, so I just want to start up on that light note. Well, for tonight, speaking about fighting fake news in Africa and the role of local initiatives. Fake news and rumors, are not new. Disinformation have always been there, and sadly, they have not spared the African continent in any way. But of course, to combat this menace effectively, we all have to deploy the local initiatives as much as we can. Now, the truth is, disinformation and its damaging effects are a worldwide concern. And I would like to quote Professor Herman Wasserman of the Stellenbosch University in South Africa, where he pointed out that disinformation in sub-Saharan Africa existed long before the social networking. And of course, during the colonial era, journalism was highly controlled by the established powers, and since the media was unreliable, parallel communication channels were set up by politicians, and they still exist today in rumors, popular music, humor, satire, and of course every means that they would always use to deploy. Now, in the wake of the COVID pandemic, I'll take that for instance, various countries had to put up strong lockdown measures in place to curtail the spread of the virus and also to flatten the disinformation curve. But of course, some fact-checking networks began to spring up. For instance, we had the one that was set up in Africa, and which was the continent's first. It was called the Africa Check. And of course, it was an independent fact-checking, or it is an independent fact-checking organization with offices in Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, and Senegal. And it was set up in 2012. Can you imagine that? So this literally means that all these years, Africa has, maybe done little, in terms of dispelling fake news or disinformation from wherever it comes from. And of course, we've had other fact-checking networks also that sprang up just after this one sprang up. We have the Mos Check, which is the Mozambique Check, and we have the Congo Check, we have the AFP, which is also in South Africa. And some of these, have the strategies actually to dispel dubious pictures online, appearing online and all of that. And most recently, we have what we call the Dubawa, and that's based in Nigeria. But personally, as a journalist, I'd like to think that a lot of fact-checking, dispelling should come from the media. But the truth is, sometimes some of these stories actually would revolve and go around as long as it can, because like we always would ask, who owns the media at the end of the day? So the agenda that's been put in place by the owner of the media might affect the way that the media itself begins to fact-check herself. So, but of course, with the use of AI technology, we're happy, and I think that's why we're also gathered here today with the Global Fact-Checking Network. We have these tools that are accessible to us, the AI tools that are very accessible to us, and then we can really sit back as media journalists, as AI technologists, and begin to think about some of the stories, that over the years we have told and told and told. And I know an old saying that when you tell a story over and over again repeatedly, it becomes the truth in a way. So I think that part of what we should do as a local initiative that we must deploy in eliminating and totally fighting fake news everywhere in the world is being able to sit down, to read, to check again. Sadly, we have social media, which has its downside and its upside as well. But I think we have more people who would run to social media easily now than they would want to go to verified sources. And that's one of the problems that we have. So Well, as a journalist, I would say that it behooves us as media professionals, as journalists from wherever we're coming from the global south and wherever it is, from Africa, to sit back and do our due diligence and ensure that these fake news we begin to put an end to it. And two strong things that I would say just before I wrap up is that we need to have a legislation and regulation. As regards social media, I know that some countries have, talked about this, but the big question is how do we regulate social media without also trying, or the people trying to feel that we're trying to stifle their voices. But if we can come together to dispel some of the fake news, I do think that the world will be a better place. Thank you.
Дорогие друзья, спасибо большое.
Dear friends, thank you for this contribution, Ms. Amazing Grace. I suggest that we hear from our guest from Romania, Ioana Bărăgan, another GFCN expert, as almost all of the panelists. Please speak into the mic to have better sound. Thank you.
I think it's working. My name is Ioana. I'm a blogger from Romania, and I will speak about the fake news in the European Union and about our last elections. So firstly, I want to say that, in my opinion, one of the main sources of disinformation in Romania, for example, and in most post-socialist countries, is that the politicians are always trying to tell us, to the people, through the voice of the social media, that the Western countries, and especially the officials from the European Union, are expecting us to be very grateful and to show always our gratefulness that they have accepted us in their so-called big European family. And this is the main reason why the media is considering itself entitled to spread lies, to spread fake news, and to ignore the facts. The general idea in the politics and in the media in our part of the world is that anything is acceptable if we keep the European Union happy. Actually, this is how the situation is working in Romania, unfortunately. Somehow, our people are asked to understand that despite the fact that they have choices sometimes, especially in the elections, they are not actually allowed to make a choice, and that they need to choose the pro-European candidate, because otherwise we will stop being considered a democracy. As you may know, this happened in our last elections, when we had actually 2 consecutive elections in Romania, and here you may know the reason for that. The reason was that one of the candidates that won in the first round of the first elections was not very pro-European. His vision was a little bit different. And they decided to cancel the elections and try again. Maybe this time it will work, and they chose the candidates more carefully this time. We don't have now enough time to talk about the reasons of the cancellation of the elections in details, and about the fake and the alarming news that the media was spreading, but I want to mention that the people of Romania were told that if the wrong candidate will win in the second round of elections, of course, Romania will leave the European Union, the investors will leave our country, and we will stop being considered a democracy. We had some more extreme things also in the TV. They were telling us that we will not have money to pay the salaries to the people anymore, and we will not have even food to eat if the European Union will start to isolate us. So the situation was really, really bad. All these things were a part of a manipulation strategy implemented by the mass media, justified by the need to protect our democracy. Shortly, they canceled the democracy in the name of protecting it. For a bit less half of the Romanians, the given reasons for the cancellations of the elections were not enough, and they believed that the Constitutional Court was under foreign pressure. As you may know, we had some interferences from France and from the Republic of Moldova. Even Pavel Durov from the Telegram sent a message regarding this and told us that the French authorities were trying to influence our elections. But unfortunately, the efforts of the Romanian media, together with their fake and alarming news, were successful, and more than half of the population believed that actually they protected the democracy and they saved us. They actually believed that we can protect the democracy by actively telling people to go to vote, and then after they make the decision, to tell them that they didn't decide correctly and that they chose the wrong candidate, asking them to vote again and giving them other options with better candidates for the system, of course. So as a conclusion, this was the Romanian strategy to protect our democracy, and this seems like it worked, as no one had any power to oppose, and the pro-European candidate won. So this was the situation.
Дорогая Ioana, спасибо большое.
Thank you, Ioana, for this presentation. You can visit GFCN's website. There are publications by our experts, and Ioana is featured there with a detailed coverage of what happened in Romania. Now we'll move to the next thematic section of the roundtable. It'll have to do more with institutions and technology as applied to fact-checking. I'm now pleased to pass the floor to our Russian speaker, a student, Daniel Buylov of Lobachevsky's University student project for fact-checking. He'll tell us about applied AI in countering disinformation. Please speak into the mic. Hello. Can I show my slides? Hello, colleagues. I am a freshman student, first-year student, majoring in journalism in Lobachevsky State University of Nizhny Novgorod. I want to tell you about fact-checking project that we operate and how we advanced it from manual fact-checking to building a whole system that identifies fakes really quickly and automatically. It started in 2020. We operated under the auspices of the European Journalism Teaching Association. We had partnerships with different countries in the EU, like Germany and Italy. We did joint fact-checking projects, but it ended in 2022, as you would imagine. But we didn't give up, and the head of our project, Ludmila Makarova, kept us going. We became self-sufficient and started verifying information on our own. We do this in Russian and in English. There is a methodology that prescribes a procedure. We identify articles with publications of interest. We trace it back to the original source. We look for experts. Since we are journalism students, we might have gaps in our knowledge. So we rely on third-party experts to provide informed opinions so that we can know for sure if something is true or not. Then we were joined by fellow students who majored in maths and coding, and we started considering automating our operations. The methodology is clear, we have the procedure, AI is on the rise. Why not train a model to detect fakes? This can be anything. Political fakes, like we did with Ukraine, fakes about science or AI. Any publication can be verified like this. This is what our first prototype looked like. It was a browser extension for users, if they have any doubts about a piece of news, to highlight a text and click check. It'll be fed to an LLM, which will say if it's true or false, including a comment. We did this for the Ministry of the Interior as well, and the first prototype could evaluate potential harm of the fake, if there were any calls to violence, inciting violence, or hateful speech, this would be detected as well. That's what it looked like. You have your text, you click Analyze, it goes into an LLM, does its thing, and gives you an explanation with a determination. However, we quickly realized that things change really fast, information becomes obsolete, and we needed what's called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. If it was true yesterday, it can become fake today, or vice versa. Here's an example. When Tucker Carlson flew into Russia, a satirical news outlet published a report that he interviewed Dugin, the philosopher. It used to be a fake, but then it turned out that an actual interview did take place. That's why we need RAG. There is a crawler who goes online. It looks up the topic based on the recent information, including filtering out irrelevant content. This is what our prototype looks like today. You provide a statement. AI looks it up online, and then based on current information, it gives you an answer. We have a clip. Let's see how it works. It's a fully volunteer project. Nobody pays us, just passionate students in journalism and coding, computer sciences. We have some statement. You feed it into the system, click Submit. You can cite the source. Then AI does a search on the general subject and gives you a determination. Again, we are not paid in any way. We do this on our own hardware, so it can be pretty slow. We rely on facticity. Not sure what country it's from, but it's a startup. It is a benchmark in this area. Their fully fledged system in this area was one of the first, and it has been commercialized by now. It's a promising area, not specific to any country. Here are the returns, and the statement was classified as fake. So, and it gives you links to the sources used for fact-checking. That was a story of public importance. This system can be useful socially as well, might benefit from investment. It's quite slow, but facticity that I mentioned provides a data set to self-check systems of such type. Their accuracy is around 90%. Our accuracy score was 88, whereas we didn't invest anything like them, $500,000. That's it from me. Thank you. Thank you, Daniil, for your remarks. We continue with our next speaker, our guest from France, a participant of the recent forum, Dialogues About Fakes. We have two alumni of the forum, Furqan and Emmanuel Leroy. Mr. Leroy, please, the floor is yours.
please put a button. Dear Emmanuel, please put a button. Yep.
Oh, sorry. Contrairement à beaucoup de mes collègues, donc je m'exprimerai en français et je vous prie de bien vouloir m'en excuser.
Unlike most of my colleagues, I will speak French. My name is Emmanuel Leroy. I come from France. I've been asked to speak on quite a complex topic. I'll try to stick to the 5 minutes allocated to me. So I would like to speak about AI ethics. The question is, who controls the algorithm? And that's a big question related to AI and ethics. The answer is quite simple. Currently, there is no ethics in the and even less moral in the world of artificial intelligence. And all AIs, Western, Anglo-Saxon, and even Chinese, and even Russian, so all AIs that exist are infected with woke ideology, what we call a destruction culture. This is the reality that we must accept. All AIs are manipulated to destroy the traditional values of humanity in all cultures and all societies. We didn't appreciate it from the start. We didn't realize what kind of monster we have to face from the very beginning. So we can go deeper to identify lots of levels of those AIs on a scale of 1 to 10. The best thing that's available is DeepSeek. I'm talking in terms of ideology, least harmful. They have demonstrated that they've been able to avoid this contamination by Western ideas. Then there is a Grok developed by Elon Musk. I have a feeling that it's ranks very close to DeepSeek. So there are those who stand for purity of artificial intelligence. And Elon Musk is one of them, because one of his kids became victim to this destruction ideology, and even Elon Musk that's designed together with his friends and experts an AI of their own, you will see that Musk's solution is highly contaminated by the Western ideology. So today we have no neutral AI. They are all focused on destroying the structure of the human society. On the other side, who controls the algorithm? This is a question that's difficult to answer. Let me offer you a metaphorical reply using a vivid example using Plankier Technologies company. Its director, Alex Karp, is a very frank person, and he says that the Palantir technology can cover all the field of human knowledge, policy, economy, religion, everything that's humane. We know that Mr. Karp is a respectable member of the board of directors of Bilderberg and a long-standing participant in the Davos Economic Forum. we also know that Mr. Karp visited Ukraine back in June 2022 to streamline Palantir technology for the benefit of the Kiev regime and its Western sponsors. So those who build the algorithm are ideological adversaries of every tradition. They all believe that the Russian world, the Russian culture, is the ultimate enemy. And this is why it is crucial that the government of Russia, which is currently the flagship of that part of humanity that does not want to plunge into the corruption characteristic of the Western world, they need to finally implement the prophecy that appeared in the Russian culture in the 19th century by Rostopchin in his letter to Adoevsky. Mind you that it was in the mid-19th century. We must protect our spirit with a huge, great wall of China-like. So there was no AI back then, but the Western poison started penetrating Russia. In the book printing era, this poison spread slowly, but now in the modern digital world, its speed is huge, and Russia needs to be protected against it. And there are scientists in the world who now have ways of circumventing the Western artificial intelligence, who can create transitions of some sorts, enabling humanity to step off the roads for self-destruction. We now give the floor to our guest from Germany, Mr. Locke. If you are ready, do start. Please speak into the mic.
I will present a concept which is named multipolar neutralization of the information space. This is a more strategic concept and not a case study. And it's a multi-stage concept and a framework for integration and connection of further concepts. And you can follow the keynotes on the screen. This is only the presentation of the basic idea. The concept itself at this stage is non-public for obvious reason. We are talking about, for example, the European Union, and you may have heard about the news that their journalists have been sanctioned. My colleague Dirk Pohlmann mentioned it before, so for security reasons of the concept and the participants, it's non-public, so the basic idea I will present here. About myself, my background is academia and especially sociology, especially Pierre Bourdieu. And there's a key sentence of his work: the truth is that it is fought for. So we have different perspectives about the truth. What we can see if we follow the social model of sociology, that there are, let's say, competition and, that is a battle who is presenting or who is bringing forward his perception or his narrative. In journalism, there is a connection also, say, what is in Germany, and, oh, yes, thank you. That is too far. So, say what is, or see and say. So, task of the journalism is also to make it visible how these, let's say, battles for information, the information war, what is really going on there. It's just part of the presentation of the truth, what kind of narratives are presented here or there. My background is also business and finally social science, and I was living in Spain also, and between Germany and Spain I was always connected to media by interest, but always independent, and later in Germany I contacted RT and established myself more or less as a background editor to focus more on structural issues related to sociology, for example. By that, I got in contact with my colleagues, and I'm an initiator and coordinator and representative of this concept. So I'm not speaking on my behalf, but I speak for a group of persons. The idea itself was developed by the practice, for example, that you have in your daily work and an editorial board. You use, if you make it simple, agency stuff, you take it because it is more easy. Even RT used Reuters and DPR before. DPR is a German news agency. And by that practice, I had an idea, and that raised the interest of some colleagues who came back to me and asked me how can they integrate that idea in their own concept. So we had a group of international colleagues, and sociology and journalism are institutions of mass society or modern society, and they're handling and information in that kind of information battle we are all witnessing. So they can serve both purposes. They can be used for manipulation, but they can also be used for clarification. In any case, they are a means of power. So power is always, let's say, it relies on hard power. Also, it needs soft power, what we call, and what we see here in the last century by famous Edward Bernays, which is related to the topic and the term of propaganda, and later Noam Chomsky with manufacturing consent. And there is a difference between that sphere, which is, let's say, promoting narratives with a certain kind of political agenda. But for doing this, you need an assessment of the reality, which is not manipulated in the best case. So we have, for example, to illustrate this, we have an intelligence service that is non-public, and it serves for providing a real picture of the situation. And then we have news agencies who are promoting and selling narratives, which are just shaping the perception, but they are not telling the, let's say, the assessment like intelligence services about the real situation. So the soft power is always related to, we can call it symbolic power, because it is dealing with the worldview and the concept of mankind, and it serves as legitimation for the secular, for the hard power, and for its administration. And by that, it is building own institutions and own realities. And we can see, for example, in the European Union, which is a structure as a bureaucracy, and it gets, by getting bigger, more tentative to politicization and to dysfunctionality, because sometimes you see how they are sticking to narratives which are not matching with the reality anymore. When we see what is going on in the European Union, we tend to perceive it as irrational, but in the logic of the apparatus, this is just a consequence of the functioning. Before, we had this soft power institution in form of the church. Now we have modern institutions. It's not only the church, it's about a mixture of science, of cultural, of education, even the judiciary, and of course mass media, which is related to our so-called mass democracy. And We can talk, especially in the Western world, about a kind of systemic disinformation, and we recall what already has been mentioned, the Colin Powell staging on the UN security with weapons of mass destruction, or we recall the incubator case in the first Iraq war. And by how is it working, the soft power machine, we can describe it on 3 levels. We have think tanks and public relation agencies. And for example, they create a certain kind of narrative. The next stage are news agencies like Reuters, or in Germany DPR. And then we have the media outlets, and they're taking the stuff, for example, as I mentioned, even RT used news agencies from the Western world and integrated in, or took it as a standard for their own news sometimes. So this together, these 3 stages serve as a consent machine, and that runs, we have structural effects by, and if you work on a daily basis in an editorial board, if you don't want to complicate your life, you take, for example, the simple way and use this agency stuff. So by that, you have a synchronization of a political agenda, and we can see it in Germany. It doesn't matter whether you use a television or the radio or so-called social media or even the newspaper. You find the same content, more or less, and you find the same wordings, the same narrative. So you have a systematic structure which is more or less creating in uniformity and exclusion of other perceptions, opinions, as we see that the Russian opinion or the Russian perspective is strictly, let's say, restricted or banned from the European information space. And in the alternative structure, what we call the so-called alternative media, we have also a structural situation, because more or less these are little or small media outlets which are competing for attention and means, and so we have a certain kind of fragmentation.
Дорогой Мунир, буквально минутку, 1 minute.
So that we can use this by setting up a parallel machine which combines sources from the West and independent sources, a concept, for example, for region news, which mentioned Pullman, and sources from the BRICS to set up a machine or a media structure which resembles this structure I just mentioned, and you can connect to the West agenda, so you are not talking about different things, but you can put other sources, you can integrate other sources, so that you can, for the alternative media region, you can provide a professionalization and also effect of synchronization as we have it in the original machine. And the dimension is on the BRICS level. As we see the evolution on the political and geo-economical sphere, we can use this, let's say, growing influence of the BRICS to set this structure up, to provide a more neutral alternative for the West, for the neutral countries in between, for the BRICS countries also. And as I said, the concept is not public, so if you want to know more about it, please contact me in person, because for security concerns.
Да, спасибо большое, Мунир, за ваш доклад.
Thank you, Munir, for your report. Let me remind you that you can take it offline during your networking time, exchange your contact details. Do bear this in mind. So I'm now give you our US speaker, Caleb Maupin, about, he will talk to you about double standards of Western media.
Well, I come to give you a greeting, and my greeting comes from America, from the United States, but not from the America that you see on television or on social media, from the real America. The real America that rejects the deception that is so widely promoted. The real America that can see that just like our leaders spread lies around the world, they also spread lies within our own country. And I come here to congratulate you, because the reason that we're here today is because we've won. The outlets that the Western imperialist, globalist, Atlanticist financial system uses to set discourse, the New York Times, the Financial Times of London, the Wall Street Journal, ABC, NBC, Fox, BBC, these outlets are discredited. Around the world, people don't believe them, people don't trust them, and the global population around the world and even within the Western countries themselves no longer accepts their deceptive narratives. The narratives they use to sell their wars, the narratives that they use to destroy countries with neoliberal economic policies that impoverish millions of people. The world has largely rejected that, and we have been victorious. And that is a point of celebration, but it brings us into a new phase, because what's going on now, as we've heard so eloquently today from other speakers about artificial intelligence and the manipulation of social media, is that the powers that be have accepted defeat in that they're no longer able to just completely control the discourse as they once did. So now they are engaging in a form of manipulation. They are trying to use the weaknesses and the negative tendencies of the forces and the people around the world that oppose them against themselves. This is, you can compare it to the martial art of jiu-jitsu, where you use your enemy's momentum against himself. You use your enemy's strengths and turn them into weaknesses. And that is essentially what they are trying to do as they are trying to regain control of discourse. I would point people towards the period in Italian history called the Years of Lead. In Italy, you had the Years of Lead, and this was because the Italian public largely did not want the country to be part of NATO. The Communist Party was on the verge of winning elections, and so we saw the Western intelligence apparatus engage in a policy of manipulation. The manipulation of far-left extremist groups and far-right extremist groups against each other, the fomenting of extreme political violence, creating a culture of political confusion, and by fomenting the Years of Lead with Operation Gladio, the Western intelligence agencies were able to create kind of a feeling of hopelessness and confusion among the Italian public. And even though the Italian public wanted to leave NATO, the NATO status quo was able to triumph because they were able to manipulate the dissident communities and create so much confusion. And that seems to be what they're trying to do now with all of this artificial intelligence fakery, with the manipulation of social media. They are trying to tap into the weaknesses of all of us and try to control those of us who are already beyond thinking and accepting their narratives, trying to manipulate us in one way or another in order to maintain their power so that they can win by default. And at this point, that is what they are trying to do. So what we engage in as we promote the truth about global conflicts, as we expose and get through the deceptions of mainstream media, it's very important that we work very, very hard to put forward an optimistic message, that we work very, very hard to not play into the jealousies and the rivalries and the tensions that they like to manipulate us against each other with. It's very, very important that we do everything we can to highlight a diversity of different voices and perspectives and hear each other out and lift each other up. And when manipulation is going on, that we don't play into it simply because of a rivalry that exists within our own forces. But let me just say that I'm here because I'm optimistic. I look at what's going on in the BRICS countries. I look at the rising economic realities of the new world. There is a new world coming into being. The Western imperialist, globalist financial system is in decline, and the world is rising. And you can lie, and you can cheat, and you can show people all kinds of fake videos, and you can flash lights in their face, but it doesn't change reality. Mao Zedong, the founder of the Chinese Revolution, talked about how knowledge comes from correct practical experience, and that you can deceive and tell stories and lies, but that correct practical experience points to the fact that people all over the world see that the Western system is falling, and that around the world it is those of us who do the work and pull the crops out of the ground and lay the foundations for the new world, that we have truth on our side. As I have been around driving here, as we came on the bus from Moscow, it was looking outside, I thought, this looks a lot like the United States. I'm from Ohio originally. I see the farmland, I see the trees and the forests, and I think about, among the people of the world, the real people of the world, there is a knowledge of what the truth is, and as much as their high-tech deceptions are thrown at us, they can't really obscure that. The last election in the United States was a great example of how mainstream media has just lost it. The reason Donald Trump won, it wasn't because he was winning in mainstream media. He won with the podcasts. He won with the interviews. He won where he was able to come across as a real person and talk about his real lived experience, whereas Kamala Harris, who was selected as the favored candidate of the imperialists and NATO, etc., she came across as completely fake. She was robotic, and I'm really proud that my organization, the Center for Political Innovation, we were able to tell the story on the podcasts and in the alternative spheres of who she really was, how Kamala Harris was somebody who rose to prominence in American politics by imprisoning people who looked like her, and how even her own father, a Marxist economist in Jamaica, had denounced her, seeing what a vile person she was and how much she was ruthless in destroying other people's lives in order to gain power in the corrupt American political machine in California. So, organizations are important, communities are important, and it's important that we put out a positive and optimistic message. We lift each other up and we embolden people, and we don't let them manipulate us against each other, because that's all they've got left. The mainstream narratives of colonialism and imperialism, they're dying. And the new world and the economy based on physical economy, growth, manufacturing, and raising up livelihoods, that's the future. We have truth on our side, so we have to continue to do our work in a good way, in an optimistic way, in a hopeful way, and not let them use our energy against us, and build and construct and challenge deception. Thank you.
Дорогой Калеб, спасибо большое за...
Thanks a lot, dear Caleb. Ms. Mantula Nonkuleka, you had a remark, right?
It's on.
For 30 seconds, okay?
Yeah. I'm listening to our colleague. Thank you very much for sharing. And one thing that is becoming very apparent is that he who owns the purse strings is he who will own your narrative. You have shared an example of what has happened in the elections in the USA. And you have said that majority of us as global citizens have allowed the current media houses to start speaking the truth, right, and seeking the truth. Who owns those purse strings? I have a startup that is a media startup that is online. Because no one owns the purse strings, no one will get my message the way another outlet would. So because you were able to do, and this is just to show and highlight how much we need to support each other beyond the narrative of just speaking, you were able to go and do entire research behind Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris. When Donald Trump invited our president of South Africa into the White House, the narrative was, well, Cyril Ramaphosa is diplomatic, and Donald Trump is not telling the truth. But that only came up the day after the lies were exposed. So what I'm trying to say here, I know Dimitri, I've only got a minute. What I'm trying to say here is, we can say the right words, but are we doing the right thing to make sure that we have the facts available, and smaller media houses and bloggers, like our sister from Romania, initiatives by this young institution, young people from the university, the institution, are being supported? Is it being done? Because I'll make an example again. We are currently sitting with the dilemma that we are here in Russia, beautiful as it is. In order for me to use my currency, the rand, I need to convert to your currency, which is the US dollar, and then convert to the rubles. These are the things that are pulling us back. We have to move away from unipolarism in every sense and become multipolar in the media sense, fact-checking sense, education sense, and even in the currency. And maybe, let's be honest, the USA just needs to agree from a political level that they have been the ones who have held our narrative, held our economies, Thank you.
Спасибо большое.
Thanks a lot. Great follow-up. We have yet another speaker. And then we'll continue our discussion after. Now I'd like to give the floor to Ms. Miria Terada to tell us about Western disinformation and how to counter it with real-life cases and what the Global South can do about it. Please, a round of applause for Miria Terada.
Yes, today we discuss what lies behind the West fights against disinformation and what should countries of the Global South do with it. In the era of globalization and digitalization, disinformation has emerged as one of the most significant threats to modern society. False information can shape public opinions, influence election outcomes, fuel conflicts, and even impact international relations. With the rise of social media and messaging platforms, fake news spreads instantly, reaching millions of users, often faster than traditional sources can debunk it. This creates an urgent need to develop strategies to counter disinformation at both national and international levels. Many examples show that under the guise of fighting disinformation, Western countries often suppress alternative viewpoints, especially those contradicting official narratives. In this context, it's crucial not only to understand global approaches to countering disinformation, but also to consider which practices could benefit Russia in protecting its informational space without compromising freedom of speech. In Europe, the European Union actively operates the EU vs Disinfo initiative, tasked with identifying and refuting disinformation. Funded by the EU budget, it regularly publishes reports analyzing media and social media content. However, its objectively is often questioned, as it primarily focuses on discrediting Russian sources and perspectives while overlooking similar Western narrative. Essentially under the pretext of fact-checking, this initiative engages in informational censorship, labeling inconvenient questions or alternative interpretations as hostile propaganda. In 2022, the EU adopted the Digital Service Act to make the digital environment safer and more transparent. It requires major platforms to remove harmful content, including fakes. However, despite its stated goals, the law has faced criticism both within and outside the EU. Critics argue its vague wording could be used to suppress opposition voices and restrict free speech under the pretext of combating disinformation. A similar issue exists in the UK, where laws on harmful messages have been used to prosecute individuals for sharp online statements. In 2024, this legislation became one of the concerns about conflicts in societal protection with political repression. A comparable situation is observed in Ukraine. In 2021, the country established the Center for Countering Disinformation, which actively promotes anti-Russian narratives. Its messages are quickly amplified by Ukrainian media like RBK Ukraine or the Kyiv Independent, and then they spread through Western outlets, particularly sensationalist British tabloids. This creates a chain where fake or one-sided claims become accepted facts in the global agenda. There are cases where debunked fakes later proved true. For instance, in 2020, mentions of a lab leak as the origin of COVID-19 were suppressed as conspiracy theories, with users banned for sharing these hypotheses. Yet 4 years later, leading scientists and intelligence bodies acknowledge it's a plausible scenario. In the US, combating fakes gained prominence during the 2024 selection campaigns. Fact-checking and digital platforms began actively moderating content, labeling false information, and removing harmful posts. However, questions arise about the independence and objectivity of those efforts. Many fact-checking organizations are founded by entities tied to political parties, such as Democratic Party-affiliated foundations, which inevitably influences their priorities and fact-checking processes, making BS a systematic issue. Russia, while a target of systematic informational attacks, is developing its own defense mechanism. By 2025, disinformation incident in Russia's informational space dropped by 42%, thanks to enhanced monitoring and domestic analytical analytical tools. However, fakes are becoming more sophisticated, often created using artificial intelligence, viral videos, or pseudo-expert opinions. A recent example is a claim by German outlet Bild that Russia allocated 2 billion euros for disinformation in Germany. This was quickly amplified by Ukrainian and British media without any documented evidence. Such narratives force a sense of threat, shaping negative perception of Russia emotionally rather than factually. Simply debunking fakes is insufficient. Society must learn to recognize them independently. Developing critical thinking is the key to countering disinformation. People tend to trust information that aligns with their beliefs, making them vulnerable to manipulations. To address this, citizens, especially youth, need to be taught to analyze information, distinguish facts from opinions, and evaluate source credibility. Introducing media literacy into schools and universities curricula is a practical step. Such subjects should provide not just theoretical knowledge, but practical skills like finding primary sources, understanding information origins, and identifying who stands behind it. Those skills are vital for navigating an information war. Additionally, technologies like open source intelligence analysts should be advanced. Western countries like Lithuania, for example, already use automated algorithms and volunteer teams to monitor disinformation on social media and blogs. We should develop Sorry for that. I'm good.
No,
thank you.
You're on camera, babes. You must look pretty.
Thank you. Sorry for that. We should develop similar platforms complemented by expert analysis to ensure systematic and tech-driven approach to information security. In conclusion, international experiences show that combating disinformation often serves as a tool for control and suppressing dissent rather than protecting truth. Anti-Russian fake spread by Ukrainian and British media create distorted narratives that are then accepted as truth. Countries of the Global South, under constant pressure from Western globalist elites, must build resilient counter-disinformation system. Instead of adopting sensorial models, they should focus on education, technology, and trust in citizens. This involves promoting media literacy, implementing OSINT tools, supporting independent analytical centers, and fostering coordination between governments, media, and society. Only through such measures can nations protect their information spaces while preserving openness, dialogue, and freedom of opinion, their core values of truly strong and secure states. Thank you.
Дорогая Мира, спасибо.
Dear Mira, thanks a lot. Have a glass of water there. That's it with the contributions by our panelists, and we'll transition to a discussion now. We have 3 questions for you. My first question will be addressed to Mr. Caleb Maupin. Dear Caleb, what do you have to say about how to decolonize media space? Decolonization in media space, how do we do it?
I think our friend who spoke, she very eloquently put it that ownership is key, that as long as the platforms and the networks are owned by certain outlets, you're going to have certain narratives getting amplified, and you're going to have certain narratives that are suppressed. I mean, I think recently I asked ChatGPT, the AI outlet in the United States, to make an image of the leader of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré. And it said it couldn't make it because he is an image of violence, is associated with violence, and they refused to make an image of this great African leader. But yet, you know, I asked them to make an image of a US leader who has bombed and destroyed countries, and there is no such issue. And that, why does ChatGPT have this bias that they won't show me Ibrahim Traoré because he's violent, and they will show me US leaders who have bombed and destroyed all kinds of countries? It's because the people who made it have a certain bias, and it's because they're paying for it. It's centered around them. We need more alternative centers, is what we need more than anything. And we can't rely on just trying to seize a piece of the centers that already exist. Look, wouldn't it be great if there was some kind of social media platform, an alternative to the Western social media platforms, that was working hard to make children healthier and stronger and smarter, that was incentivizing them and using the app to nudge young people to be more productive and more happy and more hardworking? Wouldn't that be amazing, right? We know that the social media platforms of the West, they have, not only is there a conscious bias, but also they're just profit-centered. They want to make money. But around the world, we have countries that have governments that emerge out of anti-colonial revolutions, where you have a state that is actively working to try and raise the productive forces and increase the power and intellect and strength of the population. We need those countries to develop social media outlets and to develop platforms that can be an alternative to the Western platforms. And we need to move away from the notion that we can just seize control of a section of Facebook, or we can just have a section of Google, or we can have a section of YouTube that is our own. At this point, we need to just recognize that there's going to be a diversity of outlets, there's going to be a diversity of platforms, and that the world is not going to be centered around the West. And I think most Americans realize that. Most of the American economy is not Wall Street, is not the big oil bankers. And the only future my country, America, is going to have is if it joins with the people of the world and with the new economy. And that this Western system, Wall Street, and the big tech monopolies, they're not the future. The world is going in a different direction. Most Americans realize that, and if we're going to have a future in technology, if we're going to have a future in industry or in energy, it needs to be in coordination with the emerging multipolar world. Thank you.
Спасибо, дорогой Калеб, за развитие.
Thank you, Caleb, for this contribution. Very extensive. I think it's a good segue to the Global South. Maybe I'll tap Amazing Grace. Can the countries of the Global South come up with their own standards for fact-checking? Please, Amazing Grace.
When he was speaking, something came to my mind, and it's from the popular writer in my country, Chimamanda Adichie. She says, it's the danger of a single story. Also, when Dr. Nonku was speaking, you know, she mentioned something. And the truth is, no matter how much we want to fact-check, if we don't sanitize media ownership, it's going to be a big problem. And this is because wherever you think about it, all around the world, even in Africa, politicians would always create propaganda. They will always want to hold the story down. And the truth is, sometimes they impoverish the people. Poverty is now a tool in their hands so that they're able to keep them on the ground and make sure that they do their bidding. And as well, the journalists also live in that very situation. So you find them, you know, not really wanting to fact-check anything. The truth is, how sincere really are the fact-checking organizations in the world today? And primarily, I would say that as a people in this world, we should learn to tell our own stories. Africans should learn to rise up and tell their African stories. I know sometimes when I meet people and I say, oh, do you know Africa? And they say, oh, well, Africa is a country. And I'm like, oh, no, Africa is a continent. Now, that's like a consequence of something that's been told over and over and again, right? And so I remember last year when I came to Russia and I did a story. I did 2 amazing pieces, and I recommend them. They're on my YouTube channel. The first one was I met a lot of Nigerians who were living in Russia, and it was my own side of telling how the diasporans in Russia were doing great. But that's to oppose the other narrative that, was out there all along, that, Russia is a place where people just, it felt like people were being trifled, but I saw a lot of Nigerians, I saw a lot of Igbos who were doing well, doing businesses, and someone even told me they had been in Russia since 1989. Can you beat that? So it's amazing how when I told the story, and when I got back home, I also filmed a section of Moscow through my eyes with RT. It was all over the place in Nigeria and, of course, in Enugu, where I come from. And a lot of people met me and they said, oh, we'd like to visit Russia. And I can boldly say that my stories have pulled a lot of Nigerians to Russia because I learned to tell another side of the story, which is the cultural side of Russia, which is the love that Russians have for people. I experienced it firsthand, and I could tell that, Russians are kind people, generally speaking. So I think that when Africans begin to tell their own story, when Americans begin to tell their own story and not leaving it in the hands of other people to do, like we've done all over the years, when Russians also begin to tell their own story, it will make a lot of difference. And we'll be able to fish out those people who are responsible for some of these conspiracies that we see. A lot of stories out there. I'm glad that people now can say, well, this media and this media are not telling the truth when it comes to this and this sort of story. So I think that when we learn to be brave and tell our own story, then we'll have fewer incidences of this sort of issues that we face in the world. Thank you.
Спасибо большое, госпожа.
Thank you, Amazing Grace. You touched upon a very important topic of narratives or even meta-narratives that are linked to specific countries. Here, one of the solutions, in my view, can be better education in fact-checking to make sure it's more readily available to people. And in the framework of this question, about standards of fact-checking in the global South, I would like to ask Mantula Nonkululeko my question about whether education is enough now for fact-checking. Would you mind pick this up?
So the question is education enough for fact-checking? And I'm going to boldly say, in remote areas, in rural areas, and I'm concentrating not only in Africa, in South America, there isn't enough education around fact-checking. What we have seen an increase and a mushroom of is a lot of users. Everyone, even in remote areas, has an access to a smartphone, a device, a tablet, laptop. Everyone, even in Africa, right? The average of a household is about 3 devices that connect to the internet, even in rural communities, even in places where there's no electricity and no running water. But the education of how to use this tool has not been given to people. Hence, no one checks facts. Everyone goes into social media, posts what they feel is relevant, shares what they feel is relevant, whether harmful or not. And because of the lack of education when it comes to these smart devices, we have seen an increase, and I'll be very specific to South Africa. We have seen an increase in something that is very devastating, an increase of young children being preyed upon on social media platforms. We've seen an increase of political leaders and community leaders and religious leaders and traditional leaders being hurt, abducted, maimed, because all their information is online. So every child and their grandmother knows that I can put my location, but they don't know how I can protect myself. That therefore means that even in information sharing, we need to start teaching people in remote areas and making this education accessible and free to check your facts and also protect yourself. I hope that answers your questions, Dimitri. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We are drawing close to the end of our round table. Let me try and summarize what was said above. But first, I would like to thank our speakers for finding the opportunity to come over and to share this interesting information with us, share their country's perspectives. I would like to call on people for better activity in fact-checking. Later we will sign a memorandum among the global fact-checking network members, and in the long run we would like to transform that into a information material, a reference that could be used by any country to work on the topics that we discussed during the roundtable and prepare materials for further events like this, where we can present this material. I believe this is going to be exciting. I believe that we can close our roundtable, and I would like to announce the plenary session for tomorrow.
At 2:45 p.m. until 4 p.m. we'll conduct one more session about fact-checking. The session responsible fact-checking in post-truth era, new opportunities for cooperation. And we welcome everyone. Спасибо всем большое за внимание.
Thank you very much for your attention. This concludes our roundtable.